Hello, today on my channel you will hear an amazing story about life. I hope you enjoy this story. This one struck me to the core. Honestly, I still can't forget it. Enjoy watching. Diana helped her father out of the cab car and into a wheelchair. Evan noticed the sadness on his daughter's face and cautiously asked, "Are you upset about something?" No, Dad, I'm fine. I'm just thinking a little," Diana answered hastily. "But I can see that something is eating you," continued the father, obviously wanting to know the truth of her gloomy mood. "The wedding preparations have worn me out, so I'm down," Diana said, and looked at her father. "It's a thing that shouldn't be rushed," said her father cheerfully. "But you should be happy you're marrying Dustin." "Damn, honestly," Diana said, barely holding back her tears. "Okay, I'm not going to ask you any more questions," Evan concluded. "You really are exhausted, and you need some rest. Help me up to the apartment because Elizabeth is busy today. It's good that the neighbor is helping. God bless her good health." Diana rolled the chair into the entrance and then into the elevator, which took them to the 7th floor. Opening the door to the apartment, she wheeled her father in, and while he took off his outer clothing, she crossed herself a couple of times. What that could mean remained a mystery for now. Turning to face his daughter, Evan said, "Let's cook dinner together tonight." "Okay, Dad, whatever you say." The wedding preparations were really wearing her out. Dustin, the groom, kept changing his mind about what his bride should wear. Diana didn't like it, but she tried not to clash with him. She did everything she could to make Dustin happy. Not only that, she looked like the happiest girl in the world. Her fiancé turned out to be the son of a well-known surgeon in town. Dustin bragged about his status and made the most of it. He organized drinking parties and got into all sorts of trouble. But thanks to his surgeon father's acquaintances, he always got away with it. However, there is a limit to everything, and it came on the eve of the wedding. The fact is that Diana was forced to marry him. She agreed because she was promised the most expensive thing to cure her father. True, when the unpleasant facts were revealed, Diana decided to take revenge, especially since there was a reason, and chose for this wedding, which was to take place immediately after the graduation party at the university. All this time, the girl carefully prepared, visited the beauty salon where she was literally licked, chose a dress and shoes, and then, under the supervision of Dustin, and condescended to all the machinations of her fiancé. After preparing a light dinner with her father, Diane took a quick bite and called Dustin. "I'm staying at my dad's, and I'll be there tomorrow." "Okay, but don't be late," Dustin answered and disconnected the phone. Her fiancé had let her stay at her father's house, which wasn't like him. Diane expected him to grumble and tell her she belonged in his house. But no, Dustin reacted calmly and didn't make a jealous scene. It was almost as if he was glad his fiancée wasn't with him. On the other hand, don't you ever need a break? Diana was tired of listening to him whine about traditions and rules. Suddenly, she remembered all the events leading up to the wedding. Lately, her support had been her disabled father, who had been seriously wounded in a combat deployment. He had served in the Airborne forces for many years and was proud to represent such troops. After retirement, old injuries in the form of shrapnel in his spine played a cruel joke on him. Evan Seminovich was partially paralyzed, and it happened at a time in his life when Diane's mom, Madi, was diagnosed with cancer. For the retired paratrooper, his wife's severe illness was a real blow. He threw everything he had into saving Maddie. But the doctors did not give any prognosis and only idly waved their hands. They said that medicine was not a fairy tale kingdom and could not work miracles. But Evan kept hoping and traveled with his wife to different medical facilities. Soon Maddie got even worse, and she, having not lived to her 45th birthday for only a week, died. Nor did his beloved wife, and he vowed to do everything he could to make sure his daughter would never, ever need anything. Diana realized that Daddy was doing his best for her, so did not demand from him what he could not give her. Former co-workers helped him, but the family still did not have enough money. Diana often came to school in worn-out clothes. She was given away by relatives, kind neighbors, and just good acquaintances. But despite this, the girl strived to study and was able to finish school with honors. She was lucky, and at the university where she wanted to enter, there was one more budget place. So Diana became a law student. 3 years had passed since then. Her father began to complain more often about back pain, and she met Dustin. He was a student at the same university. He was known as a ladies' man, but he didn't want to learn. He was happy with the fact that he could come and sit in the classroom all day and then go to a party. Dustin was an excellent soccer player and captain of the university team. All the girls in the faculty paid attention to him, but he had chosen Diana, seducing her with bright emotions and searing advances. For the sake of this, Dustin did not even spare the money, which he generously gave his rich parents. At the same time, Diana, responding to his advances, constantly made remarks about the caustic pushes. Dustin reacted and replied, "When we start living together, then I will stop." It was a clear proposal of marriage. However, Dustin was in no hurry to do so, seeing Diana as just a woman. In other words, he liked to court her, receive affection, and be the center of her attention. Diana, too, at first, was happy to have such a handsome boyfriend, but at the same time, all her thoughts were about her father. He needed an urgent operation, and the local doctors did not dare to do it. They were afraid that if they removed the shard, Evan Semyonovich could be completely paralyzed, and then Diana would have to take care of him around the clock. Now he is also immobile, but he can at least a little bit serve himself. To be honest, Evan was ashamed that his daughter had to look after him. He complained about it every time. "I've had it with you, Diane. I'm so sick to my stomach." "Come on, Daddy. Do you really think I'm going to leave you?" Diana answered. "It would be better for me not to live at all in this world than to suffer and torture you," said her father with tears in his eyes. "Stop it, Dad. You're only making things worse for yourself." Her daughter tried to calm him down. "You'll see, I'll think of something, and you'll be able to walk again." "What can you do, Diana? You don't have a magic wand," Evan said, smiling with difficulty. "That's right. I don't have a wand, but I have a lot of will to cure you," Diana answered cheerfully and humorously. She was optimistic and didn't let her father get depressed. But let's face it, Diana could not but realize that to save her father needed money, and a considerable amount of money, so necessary to carry out a complex operation. But where to get it, because she was studying at university, and her father's pension was barely enough for them. Diana thought about it every day. Gradually, acquaintance with Dustin grew into a serious relationship. He managed to charm Diane. True, with further steps did not hurry, postponing everything for later. At the same time, his parents are fed up with the fact that their son aimlessly burns through life, money, and does not strive for anything. They constantly hinted to him that it is time to get married. His mother, Anna, was especially successful in this. "Dustin, son, the future's not far off, and you've got to make up your mind about life." "Mom, I'm not in a hurry. I have a girlfriend, and it's enough for me," Dustin answered, but at the same time did not say who his chosen one was. Okay, let's not rush. But you must introduce her to us." Anna jokingly threatened him with her finger. "You'll find out in time," Dustin replied evasively, putting it off for later. He liked doing things that didn't take responsibility. Yes, he enjoyed his relationship with Diana, but that was enough at this point. Dustin wasn't in a hurry to go any farther yet, but his parents were of a different opinion. Another 2 weeks passed, and Dustin was still in no hurry to introduce Diana to his parents. He continued to see her, but he didn't share any news with his mother and father. Their curiosity got the better of them. And one day they couldn't take it anymore. "Son, enough secrecy. Bring the bride and we'll get acquainted," said his father strictly. "Mickey." "Of course, why wait? We're already worried about you," supported his wife. "Well, why are you so restless?" Dustin was indignant. "Well, I'll bring Diana, all right." "So her name is Diana?" Anna asked her son in surprise. "Yes, I didn't tell you. Look at him, honey. He's laughing at us too." said the father indignantly. "Son, we don't know anything about your girlfriend." "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry, I forgot I didn't tell you anything," Dustin replied guiltily, making innocent eyes. "We'll come together this weekend and you can meet Diane." Anna and Mickey took it as a gift of fate. They were so happy that they would finally be able to give their son into good hands that they organized a feast for the occasion. Dustin's mother set a sumptuous table, and his father brought from the cellar Naluka, 10 years old. At the appointed time, the son arrived with Diana. The girl was shy at first, but then realized that she was treated with kindness and relaxed. Mickey took advantage of this moment and took her aside for an important conversation. Diane was surprised at such secrecy, but decided to listen. "Understand, Diane, we want our son to be happy," Dustin's father began, probing the ground. "Well, of course, you're his parents," she replied calmly. "It's good that you understand," Mickey continued, "and I want you to keep seeing Dustin. It's just a relationship for now, but it could turn into a family." Diane realized what he was getting at and said clearly, "Time will tell, but the important thing is that your son grows up. Don't worry about that. His mom and I will prepare Dustin for real life." At dinner, Diane was no longer harassed with questions. She told them she lived with her disabled father. She also mentioned his problem and that his mom had died of cancer 3 years ago. She summarized her whole background. Dustin's parents' eyes glittered unnaturally as they listened to all this. And it wasn't even the liquor that could have affected such a state. No, it was just that Anna and Mickey realized that they were looking at the best candidate to marry their son. After all, she had nothing but a sick father, which meant that Diane would do whatever Dustin told her to do without complaint. In essence, they would control him themselves and create an obedient robot out of him. Anna saw her son as an extension of herself, but she wanted her to be in control. She did not exclude her husband from the management process, but only as an assistant. Yes, he is an excellent surgeon, but no more than that, and he had his own role in their family. Having planned all the events for the year ahead, they could not have imagined that the son would spoil everything. He began to disappear more often, and then Diane had to call them to find out where Dustin was. One day it happened at 12 o'clock at night, and Anna looked at her watch and almost snapped at Diane. "Well, what is it? Do you have a conscience?" "I have a conscience, but your son seems to have forgotten it," Diana said calmly. "So what happened?" "Dason's not home again." "Worse, Anna, the police called me and asked me to come and pick him up." "I don't understand." "What did he do?" Anna asked me dryly. "I don't really understand, but it seems that he got into a fight with his friends and broke a store window," answered Diana. "I see," Anna said. "Stay at home and don't go anywhere. I'll tell my husband, and he'll come get Dustin. He's got connections there, and he'll give him an educational talk." Anna woke her husband, briefly summarized what had happened, and sent him to the police. 2 hours later, the son was home and listened to his mother's lectures. "What are you doing making a fool of me and my father?" "Mom, don't talk nonsense. You had nothing to do with it," Dustin replied in a slurred voice. "Yes, of course. We're not the ones who will blush for you in front of Diana." Anna almost cried. "Well, I'm sorry. I won't do it again." Like a little child persuaded her son. "Go to bed, and in the morning go and apologize to Diana." "Okay, you can talk a dead man into it," Dustin snarled and went into his room. Anna shook her head at him and shook her fist at her husband. "It's all your fault." "What did I do?" Mickey asked in confusion. "You spoiled him. You gave him money, even though I didn't approve of it," she replied, curling her fingers on her right hand. "And you didn't educate him, so he grew up to be a major." "Let's not insult him." Husband made a disgruntled face. "I think everything will work out and Diana will forgive him. She's not a stupid girl, and she must realize that she couldn't find a better husband." "Oh, Mickey, I wouldn't be so cathartic," the wife said with a heavy sigh. "But we'll see what happens." And it turned out to be what they least expected. Dustin woke up and with a wrinkled face went to apologize to Diana, except he forgot to check his pants pockets. Apparently, he'd been so well rested the night before that he didn't remember anything. Passing by a flower store, it suddenly dawned on him that he needed to buy flowers. After paying the saleswoman, he took a bouquet of white roses from her. A shaky hope of forgiveness immediately appeared in his soul. Dustin rang the doorbell and held the bouquet of flowers out in front of him. Diane opened it a moment later and buried her face right in the roses. "You came, after all. As you can see, I repent and apologize," Dustin replied, breathing on her with a hangover breath. "Come in. There's no need to make a spectacle of the neighbors." Diana softened and dragged him into the apartment. They lived in the center of the city, and Dustin's parents had rented it to them. They'd offered to live with them, but Diana had refused. She'd said at the time that there was no need to rush things. Dustin went into the kitchen, took a mug from the cupboard, and began to drink cold water from the tap. "What are you doing? There's filtered water in the pitcher," Diane exclaimed. "It's okay. It's fine," Dustin dismissed her. "I have so many toxins in me that one more microbe in the water won't make a difference." Dustin drank enough and headed for the bathroom. "I have to take a shower. I smell bad." "Naturally, you've been in the monkey house," Diana laughed. But she didn't laugh when Dustin took off his clothes. A woman's panties fell out of his pants pocket. Not only that, but there was a paper note in them. Picking it up off the floor, Diana unfolded the note and saw what looked like a phone number on it. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I don't know. Someone must have been joking," Dustin answered calmly and went into the bathroom. "And you expect me to believe that?" "There's no other way unless they're not yours," Dustin laughed. "No, they're not mine," Diana said, embarrassed. "Then I don't understand anything, and let me wash up." Dustin stubbornly did not want to tell me how he got another woman's underwear in his pocket. "Okay, let's do this another way," Diane said. "There's also a phone number call. Maybe it's the owner of the panties." "Well, if you insist," Dustin muttered and picked up his cell phone. But before he could get an answer, Diane was on the other end of the line. A woman's voice came through on the other end of the line. "Dustin, hi. Did you forget about me?" "No, he was looking for you so he could give you your underwear," Diana replied stiffly. There was a beep. It sounded like the stranger got scared and turned off her phone. Meanwhile, Dustin had fallen asleep right in the bathroom and couldn't hear who Diana was talking to or what she was saying. Not long thinking, the girl brought him to his senses, patting his cheeks with her palms. "We're breaking up, okay?" "Are you mad about the panties?" Dustin mumbled. "So I'll buy you some more, even better." Diana threw the underwear at him and started to pack. It took her 40 minutes to fill her bag with her things, as she felt she wouldn't be here for long. Dustin, on the other hand, continued to sit in the bathroom, as if nothing had happened. It was as if he'd fallen out of reality and didn't realize what was happening. He only came to his senses when the door slammed behind Diana. It was as if he'd been sobered. Dustin jumped out of the bathroom and ran for the phone. The digits of the girl's number flashed through his mind. With trembling hands, he dialed them on his cell phone, but he heard a dial tone in response. That meant that Diana had blacklisted his number. Not knowing what to do next, his brain refusing to work properly after last night's fun, he started to get ready to go back to his parents. After all, only they could help him in this situation. Meanwhile, Diana was on her way to her father's house. She wanted to cry, but the tears did not come, as if she had long ago cried them. She didn't call him in advance, afraid that he would guess everything at once and start to worry. At home, she prepared her father for the unpleasant information and told him everything. Evan clenched his hands into fists and furrowed his brow. "I knew that Dustin was a dark man," he said through gritted teeth. "Dad, I didn't think he was capable of this," Diana said with tears in her eyes. "You're the one who told me about Dustin's drinking." "I'm a dad, I do. But it was just hanging out with friends," Diane replied. "That's where it all started," her father wagged his finger at her. He felt he had impunity and decided to go all the way. "What am I supposed to do now?" "Nothing. Let him worry himself," replied the father calmly. "You'll see that within 2 days he'll come here and beg for forgiveness." "He's already done that," He even gave me flowers, Diana said quietly. Well, now he'd have to lavish a gift to make it up to her. At home, Dustin received a reprimand from his parents that he'd never had to listen to in his life. Mom was the hardest on him. "Son, you just killed me," Anna said with a shrug. "It is necessary to forget in the pocket of another woman's panties." "And judging by their size, the girl was shapely," said Mickey with humor. "Honey, what are you talking about?" Anna blushed. "What's wrong? Everything is natural," reasonably answered her husband. "I just noticed that our son knows how to choose his women." That's true, agreed with his wife. "But that still didn't give him the right to behave that way." "How could you, Dustin?" "It's an insult to her feelings." "What are you gonna do?" "I thought you were going to advise me," Dustin said guiltily. "You have to think about it. It's not a quick fix," Anna said, looking thoughtful. "I know what to do," Mickey rubbed his hands together. "So, son, buy her an expensive present and invite her back to our house. And if she doesn't accept?" Dustin asked cautiously. "Try your best. It's in your best interest," his father replied sternly. Dustin followed his instructions. He bought a gold bracelet in a jewelry store and hurried to Diana's house. But she wasn't there, and Evan refused to let him in. He spoke to him through the door. "Diana's in class, unlike you." "I just got a little sick and had to take a personal day," Dustin replied. "I know how sick you are." "Don't embarrass yourself," Evan kept talking through the door. "What am I supposed to do?" Dustin begged. "I'm not the boss of you to tell you what to do. Diana's at the university, that's where you'll find her. But keep in mind, if you hurt her, I'll get you from under the ground." Dustin nodded, though Evan didn't see it, and went down the stairs. Once outside, he looked up at their windows and whispered with a chuckle, "From under the ground he'll get me, the old invalid." Near the university, to avoid being caught by the professors, he waited for almost an hour and a half. Diana appeared at the exit, accompanied by her classmates. Dustin had to keep a low profile so his gossipy friends wouldn't see him. Finally, when they had dispersed and Diana was alone, he came up behind her and put his arm around her shoulders. "Again, I'm sorry. I don't know how it happened." "Well, of course you do," Diana replied without turning her face to him. "I called Edward, and he told me they were playing a prank on me." Dustin began to justify himself. His sister answered the phone. "Let's say, but why didn't you call her back and find out?" Diana also asked without turning around. "You saw the state I was in." "Oh, yes. It was hard to miss." Diana finally around. "You couldn't even stand on your feet." "Well, imagine me calling her," Dustin continued. "By the way, this is a gift from me as a token of my forgiveness. And let's go to my parents today, they're waiting." Diana accepted the gift from him and agreed to go. At the same time, she still didn't believe him. Dustin had apologized to her so many times lately for his actions that it was time to start a journal. But she wanted to look his parents in the eye. What would they say for themselves? They were probably covering for their son to get away with it. Arriving at Dustin's parents' home, Diane found herself in the arms of first Anna and then Mickey. They were so excited they just couldn't hide their emotion. "We never thought you'd forgive him," Dustin's mom chirped. "Even I was skeptical, but now I see. I was wrong," said Dustin's father. "I haven't forgiven him yet. It's just a truce," Diana said proudly. Everyone laughed, taking her words as a sign of forgiveness. It seemed to them that Diana wanted to show her character. Dustin sat her down in a chair and sat down on the divan himself. "You don't mind our son being so mean to you," Mickey continued. "He's just a fun-loving boy who likes to be in bad company. But I'm sure that as soon as Dustin settles down, he'll get his mind right." Once again, she was being blatantly hinted that it was time to get married, and not to someone, but to their son. It seemed they were trying their best to put Dustin in good hands. Apparently, his parents were fed up with him, so they were willing to make such a move. Diana guessed what the intellectuals were up to, and decided she wouldn't disappoint them, especially since she still believed in Dustin's sincerity. After a small but dense lunch, Mickey took Diane aside again for a serious conversation. "Are you going to go back to praising your son?" She joked. "No, This time I won't. You know what I mean, he replied cautiously and uncertainly. I can see how his behavior makes you sick, but it's imperative that we marry Dustin. I realize that, but you have to realize that with his attitude, he's going to be hard for anyone to get along with, Diana countered. That's why I wanted to make a deal with you, Mickey whispered. Only no one has to know about it. A deal. I'm offering to help you treat your father, he continued. I have connections among surgeons in private hospitals. They'll take on this complicated operation. You realize that we can't drag this out any longer. It will only get worse. Diana felt a lump in her throat. She hadn't expected Dustin's parents to be capable of such a thing. I need to think about it, she said, and covered her face with her hands. Well, you don't have to cry, Mickey tried to reassure her. I just want you to marry Dustin. And if I say no, Diana asked quietly, then your father will suffer for the rest of his life, he said calmly. And that splinter will take him to his grave someday. Besides, I'm going to ask the university chancellor to have you expelled. No doubt they'll find a reason, and you'll be left without an education and without a happy future. Mickey's words sounded so serious that Diana couldn't help but believe them. She knew what kind of man he was and what he was capable of. She had to agree. All right, I'll do as you ask. But Dustin can't know anything about this. Of course I'm a grave. My son won't hear anything from me, Mickey ran his finger over his lips. At that moment, the man who had caused the conversation came up to them. What are you two whispering about? I hope you're not discussing me. You guessed it, son? His father laughed. I was explaining to Diana what to do if she finds another woman's underwear in your pocket again. What did you advise her to do? Dustin asked apprehensively. Nothing much, Dad said. I told her to bury you in those panties. Diana hadn't expected such an impromptu suggestion and laughed out loud. Anna picked up the baton after her, but Dustin wasn't smiling. He must have taken his father's words seriously. His face contorted into an angry grimace. And though no one paid attention to it, Dustin remembered the joke for a long time. At the same time, he needed to continue playing the role of the guilty groom. Diana hadn't fully forgiven him yet and kept her distance for now. That day she received an offer she couldn't refuse. But what price would she have to pay for it? She was terrified of a bleak future where, at best, she would be a servant to Dustin. Diana hated their son even more. The Major had become so disgusting that she could barely contain herself from saying everything she thought about him to his face. But there was no way out. It was her senior year, and if Mickey carried out his threat, she would be expelled. She couldn't let that happen. If her father found out, he wouldn't survive it. Diana thought about it and inwardly resented it. But there was nothing left for her to do but endure. From her parents, Dustin took Diana to their shared apartment. She pretended that everything was fine so as not to arouse his suspicions. At home, they cooked dinner together, and it seemed as if there was peace between them, but it was only an appearance, for sooner or later the irreparable would happen again. Dustin wouldn't wait long and would pull another prank. He had had enough for a few days, all the while studying diligently after returning to the university. But on the weekend, when his classmates decided to have fun at the club, he was drawn to adventure again. Diana didn't stop him, she just warned him. If I find a woman's underwear again, I'll fulfill your father's promise. Dustin was startled because Diana's face was not playful at that moment. I get it. We'll just sit with the guys, he said. Okay, I'll see you at 12 o'clock at the latest. Diana pointed at the wall clock. Dustin left, and she immediately dialed her father's number. Dad, hi, how are you? I'm fine, daughter. Elizabeth is helping, and that's good, she answered. What about you? Is everything okay? I think so, Diana answered uncertainly. I don't know what's wrong with your voice. I told you, I'm fine, she said more confidently. It's just that Dustin and I had a little fight, and now we're making up. I'm getting married, by the way. That's great news. Dustin proposed to you. Of course he did, Dad. Of course he did. Diana lied. She couldn't tell her father that Dustin's parents had talked her into getting married. He wouldn't understand and would say she had no dignity. "I'm so glad, my daughter," Evan said in a cheerful voice. "You wouldn't believe what a celebration this is for me. If your mom were alive, she'd be happy too." "I don't doubt it," said Diana, crying. "Well, don't cry, daughter. Everything will be all right," her father soothed her. "You'll soon get married and you'll be the happiest person in the world." "Your words to God," said Diana. "Is there any doubt?" cautiously asked her father. "No, Dad. I'm just thinking," she replied. That was the end of their conversation. Diana couldn't lie to her father anymore. After all, this wedding was nothing but a farce that only Dustin's parents needed. For the sake of it, they were willing to compromise their own principles, to live only for love. And Diana was beginning to think that Anna and Mickey hadn't married for love either. Dustin's parents had suggested that they get married the week after the university graduation party. They were anxious to get their son married as soon as possible. He'd become even more out of control. And if Diana was somehow used to it, it was already annoying them. At the same time, they couldn't openly tell Dustin what was on their minds. They loved him too much to upset him. As time went on, the prom was exactly 2 weeks away. Diane waited for Mickey to fulfill his promise, but he was in no hurry and remained stubbornly silent. She was tired of it, so she decided to remind him of it herself. "You haven't forgotten your part of the bargain?" "Diane, my memory is fine," Dustin's father said evasively. "It's just that these things don't happen right away, and there's no hurry when the wedding's right around the corner." "But you promised," Diana began, but Mickey interrupted her. "Don't worry, your father will be fine. If he's put up with this long, it's okay if he waits a little longer. Well, understand, there's a waiting list at the clinic. I've made arrangements, but a couple of weeks of patience, and it'll all be over." "What will be over?" Diana asked in confusion. "The end of your father's suffering, darling." Mickey smiled and patted her on the shoulder. After that conversation, Diane realized that until she married Dustin, no one would perform surgery on her father. She had to step on her pride again and continue to pretend that everything was fine. Everything was fine. At the same time, such humiliation did not bode well. If Dustin's father was being evasive, something was amiss. Preparations for the wedding were well underway. Diana began to visit her father more often, even though Elizabeth was looking after him. She couldn't bear to see her being lied to. No wonder. Mickey was deliberately dragging the rubber to make her nervous. Meanwhile, Dustin was preparing for a happy marriage through his parents' efforts alone. He wanted to continue to maintain the status that had developed between him and Diane. And Mickey, however, were determined. "Son, come on, family is much better," his mother urged him. "Can't we just leave it as it is?" Dustin looked at her like a little kitten. "No, because that's what my father and I decided," his mother said. "Isn't that right, Mickey?" "Yes, of course, dear," nodded the husband. "You see, son, Dad supports me too and wants you to be happy." "Well, if that's what you decide, that's fine," Dustin agreed. Happy that the problem with their son was solved, the parents hurried to order the most expensive restaurant for the wedding. They were going to celebrate the event with a big bang. Yes, so that everyone in the city envious and long said, "Look at how generous these Walkers." Anna especially wanted that. She cared about her husband's reputation and could not help but realize that any event with his participation, it is advertising. As for Dustin, he only partially agreed to his parents' demands. He had no desire to give up his old lifestyle. All these parties and clubs and girls of easy behavior and beckoned the promiscuous and eager for debauchery young guy. He, by the way, was not shy to talk about it. True, for Diana every time invented stories, like the one about underpants and the sister of a classmate. At the same time, Diane suspected that Dustin was taking girls to their house. A neighbor once told her, "You know, Diane, he brings someone over when you're not home." "What do you mean?" "You know, girls, young and pretty," the neighbor whispered, as if someone could hear her. "Are you sure about that?" Diana asked. "Here's a cross for you, Diana." The neighbor crossed herself. "I've seen Dustin bring girls over several times with my own eyes. And the interesting thing is, he was always drunk. Otherwise, he'd say hello, but he'd walk by like I was a ghost. I see. Thanks for the information, Diana thanked her neighbor. At that moment, she felt so nasty that she wanted to spill everything out. Diana felt nauseous, her insides were turning upside down, and her head was just buzzing. Dustin didn't care about morality at all, since he'd allowed himself to bring other girls into their home. And now the trick with the unexpected sister will definitely not work. Diana decided to take action and went to her father's house. There, in her little jewelry box, was the family ring. Mom had given it to her shortly before she died, and Diana had promised to keep it, no matter what life's difficulties. Now, however, the moment had come when a choice had to be made. Her father greeted his daughter with mild amazement. "Don't tell me you two are fighting again." "No, Dad. Everything is fine," Diana replied calmly. "I'm gonna have a sleepover tonight." "What about Dustin?" Dad asked. "I called him. He knows," she said. "Don't worry about him. Dustin's having a great time. He's having a good time." "Oh, so he's having a bachelor party." "Well, something like that," said Diana. "Then you should have a bachelorette party," Dad continued. "That'll come later," Diana said mysteriously. In the meantime, she had to get ready for the wedding. In her room, she checked her jewelry box and made sure the ring was still there. In the morning, Diana was going to do something that would help her expose Dustin. She took the ring to a pawn shop where she got good money for it. The appraiser, a gray-haired man, shook his head sympathetically and said through the glass, "It seems that you have really serious problems, if you dare to do such a thing." "Yes, I am," Diana answered him. She didn't say anything more to him. With the proceeds, she bought a hidden camera. She decided to install it in the bedroom to record all of Dustin's adventures. But before she could do that, she had to find a professional to do it. Diana called a company through a newspaper ad. They promised to send an installer, and they didn't charge much for the service. As luck would have it, Dustin didn't show up at home that day. It looked like he was out with his friends again. A specialist arrived at her place 2 hours later and carefully installed the camera. "Well, now it's gonna work like clockwork." "Tell me, did I understand correctly that you can take pictures later?" Diana asked. "Of course, as you wish," the installer replied cheerfully. "If you want, you can download them to an electronic medium. I see you've decided to set up your own detective agency." "Something like that," Diana jokingly waved him away. "And thank you for your speed." As she paid, Diana tuned in to find out who Dustin was taking to their house while she was away. She didn't bother telling his parents. They'd be sticking up for their son anyway. Besides, she'd made a deal with Mickey, and for her father's sake, Diane decided to go through with it. She still believed that a miracle would happen and her future father-in-law would keep his promise. The unsuspecting Dustin once again brought the girl to his house. It was afternoon, Diana was in class, and he decided not to bother himself with tedious lectures. Lately, Dustin had disbanded in general and was doing everything to make him even more hated. Maybe it was the wedding that had affected him. He just went along with his parents' demands. In fact, he didn't want to get married. He wanted his freedom. But he didn't realize that his mother and father were not going to fund his wild life without limits. They already risked their reputation when they constantly pulled his son out of various troubles. And he should have realized that it was time to stop and think about the future. But no, he'd rather continue to have fun, throwing his parents' help to the wind. That's what Dustin was, irresponsible and spineless. And even if he got married, it would still be up to his mom to decide for him. Anna wouldn't let her son set sail without personal supervision. Yes, she slept and dreamed about when he would finally get married, but in such a way that she would always be there for him. In this case, she and her husband even wanted to buy an apartment across the wall from the neighbors, and then Anna would come to them every day. At the same time, she did not know about her husband's true intentions. She didn't know that her husband was playing his own game, and not just making some plans, but keeping Diana on a short leash. It was possible that she would not have approved. At least, she wouldn't want to create a happy future for her son that way. All these games were being played past Dustin. He was getting ready for the wedding, but in a special way. It looked like his bachelor party had gone on too long and needed to come out of the steep dip. He showed up at the university that day, but Diana, on the other hand, excused herself. She went to their apartment to review the CCTV footage. But no sooner had she taken it down than the doorbell rang. Her heart pounded so hard, it was ready to jump out of her chest. Putting the camera in her purse, she went to open the door. "Oh, hello, Catherine." The neighbor stood on the doorstep and Diana made a face as if she had just woken up. "It's good that you're home and not in class," she said briskly and entered the apartment herself. "Something's wrong." "Are you still asking?" "Question for question," the roommate said. Dustin brought a girl again. Not just one girl, but several at once. What a womanizer. "He's got a nerve, he's going to get it from me," Diana said indignantly. But she didn't really care what Dustin was doing. "That's right, Diane, shake him up," the neighbor said. "Or maybe I'll help. I have more strength." "No, don't, Catherine. I can do it myself," answered Diana calmly. "Well, okay, of course. It's up to you. But if anything, call me." The neighbor left the apartment, and Diana was finally able to exhale. She had been so scared when the doorbell rang that she was ready to fall through the ground. If it was Dustin, he'd start asking questions, and he'd suspect something was wrong. The camera was in her purse, and all she had to do was dump what she'd recorded. Diana didn't do that at the apartment and went back to her father's, who still had her old computer. All the way there, all she could think about was what was inside. Would she really have to watch Dustin's most shameless adventures? Wondering about it, Diana almost missed the call from Anna. "Hi, honey. Have you done all the wedding preparations?" "Yeah, almost. I have a beauty salon and hair appointment at the end of the week, and then a dress fitting." "Well, look, we've already booked and paid for the restaurant," Anna continued. "I hope everything will be fine and we won't have to blush." "No, everything will be at its best," Diana answered with joy in her voice. Anna disconnected the phone, and the girl thought about the fact that all this would be over soon. This week, besides getting her hair done and trying on dresses, it was graduation. Not only that, but Dustin had volunteered to help her pick out the dress himself. He decided that his bride should look like a doll, and he'd ruled out a simple outfit. But what the dress would be was still a secret to Diana. At home, she downloaded all the footage from the camera onto her computer. And what she saw shocked her. Dustin and his girls were completely naked. They were walking around the apartment like that, uninhibited. Although what could they be afraid of if everything was happening in her absence? Besides, Dustin was using their bed, not the divan in the living room. All in all, he was having fun without principle. Diane watched the footage and cried, tears rolling down her cheeks and dripping onto the table. Turning on some music on the computer, she decided to distract herself a little. But suddenly her father came into the room. "Daughter, you don't come out. You don't talk to me." "Dad, I'm sorry." "I'm just tired," Diana replied sluggishly. "Good, then I won't bother you." The father closed the door and rolled on the wheelchair to watch TV. He knew that it was better not to disturb his daughter at such moments when she was alone. Diana would come out herself when she came to her senses and wanted to talk about something. This time, however, his daughter did not talk to him. She took some things and left early in the morning. The girl hurried to an acquaintance who worked in a photo studio. With his help, Diana wanted to take some photos from the video shoot. Frank, seeing her in the doorway of his atelier, said cheerfully, "It's been a long time. Let me at least give you a hug." Diana responded in kind. "And you haven't changed? You're still the same searing brunette." "Only you've never noticed," Frank muttered playfully. "Come on, you've got so many groupies I can't compete with them," Diane said. "That's true, but you're still the best," Frank said. "So what brings you to me?" "Here," she handed him an electronic media. "I need to take some pictures." "Okay, let's see." Frank replied, and took the small black box from her hands. A few minutes later, a video appeared on the monitor screen. Frank watched it carefully and only had time to round his eyes. And when it was over, he asked cautiously, "It's none of my business who's on the tape, but why do you need it?" "I want to keep it as a memento," Diana joked cheerfully. "So will you take the pictures, or should I look for another specialist?" "Yes, of course. Just show me what you want in the pictures," Frank nodded. Diane picked out some great angles that she thought were good. They were enough to get a good look at what Dustin was doing. Though to be honest, it was clear he hadn't invited all those girls over for tea. This whole camera thing to get back at him. She guessed that Mickey had no intention of helping her father. He was just pretending to care. Anna wasn't on her best behavior either. She didn't know what kind of fruit her son was. She could have gotten him to calm down. But no, she just gave him more slack. And he took advantage because he didn't see any obstacles. Guesses about the futility of treatment of his father was confirmed on the eve of the wedding. Diane overheard Mickey and his wife talking while they were visiting. "Are you out of your mind? What if she finds out?" Anna whispered to her husband. "Yeah, no, I'm sure Diane's just dreaming about her father's operation," Mickey bragged. "I don't know. It's all shaky," Anna continued. "Stop panicking. The wedding will be over, and then I'll tell her everything," said her husband. "Okay, do as you wish, but don't let me down," Anna summarized. Diana almost burst into tears when she heard that. But she had the stamina to hide her emotions deep inside. After this, she had no doubt that her father would not be treated. And, in fact, it was possible to refuse the wedding. After all, no one was forcibly pulling her, but no. Diana decided to go all the way and take revenge. True, her father would not approve of this. He did not like to retaliate negatively, even if he was offended. Evan taught his daughter to draw the right conclusion. "Remember, Diana, a man can say bad words to you as much as he wants, but you must keep your composure. The truth is the most powerful weapon you have in your hands. You will be able to use it at any moment when the enemy does not expect it." Diane did just that. She purposely reproduced the photos from the videotaping to give her a surprise. Dustin and his family actually humiliated her dignity. Not only that, they tried to convince her that their son was the best family man in the world, and that Diane would follow him around like a stone wall. She hadn't heard such lies in a long time, unless you count her school years. In those days, many students lied to hide their problems and said whatever popped into their heads. But she's not like that and will use the truth to her advantage. The time of preparation for the wedding came to an end, and the day came when it was necessary to say the main words to each other. Almost all the guests, who in one way or another knew the Walker family, gathered. Her father had arrived with Diana, or rather, he had been brought by cab. Evan did not hide his joy, because he was marrying off his beautiful daughter. "I just want you to be happy." "Thank you, Daddy. I'm glad to hear that," Diana answered, while she looked at the hall. She wanted to make sure all the guests had arrived. The waiters were waiting for the command to bring out the gifts. Live music was playing everywhere, and everyone was in a good mood. Dustin walked over to Diana every now and then to see if everything was okay. He was so nervous that even an aperitif didn't calm him down. His parents, meanwhile, were quite comfortable welcoming the newly arrived guests. After an hour and a half, the hall was filled with people, and here Diana decided to make a speech. "I want to thank Anna and Mickey from the bottom of my heart for such a gorgeous wedding." Everyone looked at them and clapped their hands. "And I can't help but thank them for Dustin." Diane's voice was shaking, but she continued, "because he is truly a worthy man in every woman's eyes." The guests looked at Diana for a moment, surprised. The girl called the waiters and said, "Now they will bring a surprise, which I have been preparing for so long." There were cheers of joy in the hall. As it turned out, the guests loved surprises, especially if they were free. After a few minutes, the waiters brought out envelopes for everyone. "Take one each," Diana commanded. The guests took the envelopes from the waiters' hands and waited to see what would happen next. Surprisingly, it was Dustin and his parents who didn't get any. Outraged by this injustice, they shouted in one voice, "What about us, Diana? Did you forget about us? We want surprises too. Give us those envelopes too." "No, my dears, you are more important to me than anyone else in the world," she said ironically. "After all, it is a surprise for you, but it is necessary for everyone to see it." The guests started opening the envelopes and pulling out pictures. The very ones she had reproduced from the video shoot. Evan was curious as to what was in those pictures, so he rode his wheelchair up to one of the guests. "Excuse me, I'm Diane's father. I didn't get an envelope either." "Yes, please join us," the guest replied, and he rounded his eyes when he saw what was captured on them. The photos were full of shots of the son of a famous surgeon in the city having fun with naked girls. Not only that, he himself was without clothes, brazenly defiling in front of his mistresses. The guests looked at these pictures and clucked their tongues. Finally, Mickey had had enough of this, and he approached Evan. "Would you allow me?" "With pleasure, Petrovich," Diana's father called him by his middle name. "Just the best surprise for you and your family. Just look, don't go blind or your wife will get jealous." When she heard that they were talking about her, Anna rose abruptly from her chair and, taking Dustin by the arm, approached her husband. "Let's see what's in the pictures." Evan handed them several pictures. They nearly collapsed on the floor when they saw their son with his mistresses. Naturally, there was a hiccup. "Dustin, son, what is this? Why are you in pictures with naked girls?" Laughing across the room, their son abruptly blurted out, "I'm not bad. And most importantly, there's something to look at." "Thank you, Diane, for the publicity." Unable to tolerate his attitude, she threw her wedding ring on the table. "Have fun." "It's your favorite thing to do," the guests murmured, discussing aloud the family of the famous surgeon. Meanwhile, Anna and Mickey were ready to fall to the ground in shame. They had no idea what kind of surprise the bride would give them. But it was their fault. They should never have promised something they didn't intend to fulfill. And that was especially true of Dustin's father, who had deceived her. Before leaving the restaurant, Diana addressed the guests again. "Now you see who you've come to congratulate," she cried, not even trying to wipe away her tears. Her father rode up to her in a wheelchair. "Daughter, don't. Let's get out of here." "No, Daddy, I'll make a deal. Let everyone know what kind of people they are," Diana continued. "You won't believe this, but Mickey tricked me into marrying his son." "That's an outright lie. Don't believe a word of it," the surgeon shouted, waving his arms vigorously. "Calm down, Mickey. You'll have a chance to speak." Someone answered him from the audience. The surgeon was immediately silent, looking at the guests with funny eyes. "So," Diana took the floor again, "he promised to organize a complicated operation for my father. He is a former paratrooper. Received a shrapnel wound in the back during a combat mission. Well, how could I do otherwise?" Diana looked at the guests with tearful eyes, and they, in turn, at the surgeon's family. Everyone had a disgruntled look, as if they had come not to a wedding, but to a ruined performance. Dustin was the only one who didn't react. It seemed to him that it was all a game, and soon it would be over. Anna stepped forward and tried to justify her son. "It must have been a bachelor party. I don't see anything wrong with it." "Of course it was, because Dustin is a saint to you," Diane replied and stormed out of the room. The guests looked at each other and grumbled unhappily. "Oh, Mickey, you've ruined your reputation." Indeed, the surgeon was no longer in the mood for fun. He realized that the news of the wedding would soon spread throughout the city, and only a lazy man would not point a finger at him. He looked threateningly at his son and said angrily, "You couldn't wait till the wedding. You broke the combination. Come on, Mickey, we have nothing more to do here." His wife took him by the hand and led him to the exit. "Mom, Dad, what about me?" "You're your own man now," his mother said. "You're on your own. We won't help you anymore. By the way, I'll block all the cards today so you won't have fun with our money." The parents also left, leaving the son alone with his thoughts. He had a lot to think about. After all, the unknown was ahead of him, in which he would have to survive somehow. Meanwhile, when Diana ran outside, a man in his 30s approached her after a couple of minutes. "I'm sorry to intrude, but I can help your father." "Are you a wizard?" Diana asked in a detached manner, not believing what he said. "No, I'm a surgeon and I have my own clinic," replied the stranger. "By the way, my name is Tom. You can just call me by my first name." "Thank you, but we still don't have that much money for the operation. You're not a philanthropist and you need to earn money too. You don't have to pay anything. We'll operate on your father for free," Tom reassured her, gently running his hand over her shoulder. "I don't know what to tell you," Diana said uncertainly. "Let's go to the clinic right now," Tom suggested. Diana wanted to run after her father, thinking that he was still in the restaurant. But Evan suddenly approached her. "I heard that, daughter. It's up to you whether you agree or not." "Dad, this is our only chance and we have to take it," Diana replied. Together they went to Tom's clinic. There he ordered to prepare the best room for Evan Semyonovich. And while he was being prepared for surgery, Diana had time to get acquainted with the interesting and handsome surgeon. It turned out that he also experienced betrayal. His wife cheated on him with his best friend. As a result, they divorced, and Tom literally from scratch, rebuilding the clinic. His ex-wife almost bankrupted her, taking the money and some of the equipment. In a short time, he was able to start the clinic, keeping the same staff. And now these doctors, under his guidance, were preparing Evan Semyonovich for surgery. Everything was successful, and the splinter which had tormented him for so long, was carefully removed. In full mobility has not yet returned to him. But now the paratrooper could at least move around on crutches, completely abandoning the wheelchair and outside help. Diana gained confidence in Tom, and they began to meet. She finally found her happiness as a reward for all the torture and humiliation. As for Mickey, the incident caused him problems at work. He was trusted less and less often with complex operations, and he could no longer earn a normal income. His son began to drink because he was cut off from the money trough, and he could do nothing. He found himself a strange company and spent the whole day playing pairs with them in the yards. The acquaintances often saw Dustin drunk when he was either sitting on a bench or lying under it, and none of them tried to save him. They didn't care. And just like that, one day he ruined his life, turned into an alcoholic, and was not going to get out of it. He never got married because no normal woman would ever look in his direction again. Diana soon married Tom, and after a while she informed him that she was pregnant. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.